Well, good evening, my friends. Today is Wednesday, and it is time for Bedtime Stories with Pastor Michelle. I don't know what, I was getting a little hyper. So, tonight's story is from Peter Pan, and it's The Lost Boys Get Lost. So, let's get into this story. The Lost Boys were walking single file through the woods of Neverland on their way home after an afternoon of adventure seeking, when Slightly, who led the way, stopped in his tracks on the bank of Mermaid Lagoon. Stopped in his tracks on the bank of Mermaid Lagoon. The others, Rabbit, the raccoon twins, Cubby, and Toodles, came to an abrupt halt behind him. "Wait a minute," said Slightly. "We almost passed Mermaid Lagoon. What are we doing here again?" Behind a bush, Tinker Bell giggled as she watched the Lost Boys looking around in confusion. Tink had spotted them on their march and had not been able to resist playing a joke. She had flown ahead of them and used her fairy magic to make the various landmarks of their route home look different than normal. Now here they were, walking past Mermaid Lagoon when Slightly remembered passing the same spot a good while back. "I think we're walking in circles," Slightly proclaimed. "Lost Boys, I think we're lost." Tinker Bell overheard and tried desperately to stifle her laughter, but before she could contain it, one giggle exploded into a full-fledged laugh, and, "Hey, did you hear that?" He darted over to a bush, and Cubby saw growing alongside the path and moved a branch to one side, and there was Tinker Bell, hovering in midair, holding her stomach and shaking with laughter. "Tinker Bell!" cried Toodles. It didn't take them long to work out that Tinker Bell was laughing at them and that she was the cause of their confusion. Still laughing, Tinker Bell flitted away, taking her normal route home to the fairy glade, left at the weeping willow tree, right just before Sparrowbird Grove, right again at Spiky Rock, and on toward the sparkling stream, which led to Moon Falls and the fairy glade entrance. But wait a minute, after turning right at Spiky Rock, Tinker Bell saw no sign of the sparkling stream anywhere. Where was she? Now it was her turn to get completely lost. Oh, I could tell stories about how many times I've gotten lost. My wife, Janelle, makes fun of me because I and my mom will say things like I could get lost in a paper bag. And I think it's true because I have an amazing gift. And you know what that gift is? I can get lost using GPS. True story. So, there's been many a time when Janelle and I have, gotten a little bit confused and a little bit lost. We've survived many road trips. We're still together after all these years. So, I know what it's like. But you know what? There's a great saying, and it sticks with me sometimes. You can never get so lost that you don't eventually find your way home. I don't know if that's exactly true, but I think about that sometimes. Because sometimes there's been times when I've gotten so lost and I didn't think I was going to find my way home, and somehow I do. So, I don't know. There's a sermon there somehow. I don't know. So let's dive right into our Bible character. And so our Bible character tonight is Zipporah and Jethro the priest. And this is all about Moses married Jethro's daughter. So, and here is a picture. Moses meets Zipporah in a 1481 fresco by Sandro Botticelli. And so there, right here, you'll see the picture. There we go. And then right there, you'll find a biblical codex found at St. Catherine's Monastery on Mount Sinai. So there we go. So let's hear about Zipporah and Jethro the priest. I think Jethro is also a character in the Beverly Hillbillies. That has nothing to do with the Bible. Okay. The book of Exodus identifies Jethro as a priest of the Median. According to Genesis, the Mennonite tribe traces origins to a son of Abraham's second wife, Keturah. This suggests that Mennonites remain faithful to the God of their forefathers. Indeed, during his stay with Jethro in the Sinai, Moses first encounters God in the form of a burning bush. Jethro, says Exodus, had heard of all that God had done for Moses and for his people Israel, which underscores the close relationship between the priest and the God of Abraham and Jacob, especially since Jethro then proceeded to bring a burnt offering and sacrifices to God. As Moses returned to the Sinai at the head of the Israelites, he was delighted to see his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him. Better yet, Jethro had also brought along Moses' wife Zipporah and their 2 sons, Gershom and Eliezer. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all the gods, Jethro said when seeing the liberated Israelite slaves. But he also counseled Moses to create a proper organization, ruled by laws to manage the unruly Israelites. You must teach them ordinances and laws. Moreover, you must select out of all these people able men who worship God, men of truth, to rule over them as officers and judges. Thus, Jethro prepared Moses for the great climax of the Exodus drama, the moment when God would hand him the laws that would govern the nation of Israel for all time. The book of Numbers suggests that Jethro, now called Hobab, then served as a guide for the Israelites to lead them out of the Sinai and into the Promised Land. Thus, the caravan moved from one major oasis to another, including the oasis of Hazarath and the great oasis of Kadesh Barnea. The location of Hazarath has been identified as the Bedouin oasis of An Hudra. From here to Kadesh Barnea on the threshold of Canaan is a mere 60 miles. But Moses realized that his exhausted people were not ready to enter the Promised Land. They would have to build an army first, and that process took another 40 years. Only then could the great conquest of Canaan begin. Moses would never see that Promised Land except from afar. On the eve of the Hebrews' crossing of the Jordan, the book of Deuteronomy tells us that he went up to Mount Nebo to behold the valley of the river and the hills of the Promised Land. And there he died to be buried in an unmarked grave. His successor was Joshua, a youthful commander who had distinguished himself during the battle against Amalek at Rephidim, and later formed part of the reconnaissance team sent to explore the land of Canaan. Under Joshua's command, the Israelites now prepared to invade the land of Canaan and make it their own. The Promised Land was a strip of land known in prehistoric times as Canaan, wedged between the Mediterranean and the Arabian Desert, carved by highlands, coastal plains, and low valleys. Only the Jezreel Valley was suitable for agriculture, drawing its water from numerous springs as well as 2 small rivers. But the Jezreel and the coastal plains were stoutly defended by the Canaanites, leaving the Hebrew tribes little choice but to settle in the central highlands. And so here is a picture of a Bedouin praise near Jebel Musa in the Sinai Desert, the presumed location of the biblical Mount Sinai. So there's someone praying. And there is a picture of the fortress Megiddo guarded the Jezreel Valley. So there's a picture right there. And so there's something to be said when you think about Moses, and tomorrow we're going to hear about Pharaoh. But when you think about Moses and all the time he spent traveling to the Promised Land and how he didn't actually even get to see it. And I think about that a lot, and I think about that in regards to us, whether or not we're going to see our own Promised Land. And I hope we do. But that doesn't mean you stop fighting to bring a little bit of heaven on earth. Whether or not you get to see the end result, we still must continue to work for that. If that makes sense. It's on my mind a lot. I also think of Martin Luther King Jr. in one of his final sermons, and I think it was his final sermon, where he talks about how he's seen trying to get up to the mountaintop, and look at him. He didn't get to see the world get better, and well, we are still all waiting for the world to get better. But I don't know. I just think about that no matter what, we're called to work to make the world a better place. Even if the end result, even if we're never going to live, even if we don't live to see the final product, we're still called to work on the product. Does that make sense? Anyway, God bless you all. This pandemic, I pray will be over soon. I pray that things get better. But until then, let's hold on to each other, even if from a distance, and let's continue to love one another as best as we can. Much love to all of you.